Recording in progress.
Awesome. All right. Welcome, everyone. So where we're picking up today is on page 77. And we're in the chapter Into Action. Now, where we left off was obviously the most logical and reasonable place to stop, which is in the absolute middle of the paragraph. So what we're going to do is very top of page 77, and we're going to go down 3 lines. So what we were talking about last week was this line: our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. And so what are we talking about? We're talking about, why do we make amends? What is the purpose of amends? And I spoke about it last week, but it's such a good line, and people are filtering in because they're trying to avoid the announcements that I normally do. I know, I don't mind. And so they're filtering in. 77, we'll talk about it. So it says, our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. Now, this line is a continuation of the third step decision that we made. The decision that we made that we were going to turn our will and our lives over to the care of this power. And how we do this is we work these 12 steps as a way of life, like our life depends on it, because it does. And the reason why we are making amends is so that we can be of service to God and be of service to other people. That's why we're making amends. And I shared last week, when I have sponsees that are like, you know, I'm willing to make amends because I know it's not about me. And you know what I do? I don't correct them. I don't say nothing because they're willing to make amends. I'm not going into a pedantic philosophical sort of debate on why. I'm zippity doo dah. I don't care why you do it. Go do it, girl. And if they're like, I'm willing to make amends because I know it's not about me, it's about the other person, or because it's about me and not the other person, again, no corrections needed. Just go make those amends. They'll figure out why as they do it. Doesn't matter. But if we're here today and we're already willing and we got no qualms, that's why we make amends. Because what we're here to do is to bring about a spiritual awakening, a spiritual experience. And so what I've got to do is I've got to clear away the stuff inside of me that's blocking me from that power. And I can't feel connected with God when I'm filled with that guilt and that remorse. Or as I like to say, hiding behind mailboxes. I know we have far fewer of those. We can blame Brian. He works for UPS. I'm just kidding. I like to tease him as much as I can. But you know that feeling when you're like going grocery shopping and you see somebody down the aisle and you like book it the other way, or hiding behind mailboxes, you see someone and you're like, duck. I can't do God's will if I'm hiding from amends that I haven't made. So I always think that's important. And now we're going to talk about the approach. So it says, it is seldom wise, which means rarely a good idea, to approach an individual who still smarts from our injustice to him. When it says smarts, that means hurts. And our injustice means we did the bad thing. So it's not a good idea to approach somebody who is still hurting from the harm and the pain that we have caused and announce that we have gone religious. So I just like hurt you. I physically, spiritually, emotionally gave you a pop, a sock, and you're like, and I'm like showing up like, listen, I know that yesterday I was a giant jerk, but today I am an enlightened being. I am an awakened soul. Look at me. I'm spiritual now. Isn't that great? It's saying, girl, don't do that. Girl, do not do that. It says in the prize ring, this would be called leading with the chin. So if you're in a boxing match or you're in a UFC situation, to lead with the chin is to leave yourself unopened. So imagine you're in a boxing match and you're just kind of putting the chin out. I don't got my gloves up. I got my chin out. Man, I'm going to get KO'd. I'm going to get knocked out. I'll be on the floor very quickly. So that's what it's saying. Yeah. Or a fight with the missus. Well, that's not the most healthy relationship. But we do have the ability to take inventory and allow God to lead us to a sane, sound sex ideal that we can take to prayer on a daily basis, where hopefully that sort of disagreement is not happening. And if not, there's some helpful considerations in Two Wives that can help us navigate difficult relationship moments and conflict. That's right. I'm on a whole tangent based on Paul's joke in the chat. You throw things in the chat. Where will we go? I don't know. Where am I? Well, I'm not in Kansas anymore. Alrighty. So it says, why lay ourselves open to being, doing a Conor McGregor. We don't want to do that. And in the prize ring, this would be called leading with the chin. Why lay ourselves open to being branded fanatics or religious bores? So we don't want to cause prejudice, which is, again, to have an old idea about an experience I've not had. And here's what it's saying. We may kill a future opportunity to carry a beneficial message. And if you've made amends, you'll know this phenomena. It's wild. I never think that this is going to happen before I make an amends. But as soon as I start making amends, this happens. How often a 9-step amends turns into a 12-step call. I don't know how God is going to use me. Do you guys know what I'm saying? If I show up with the willingness, I show up with the desire to be helpful to others, to set right that wrong, to be open, to be honest, to be transparent. Man, that's when God moves. And there's so many times that 9th step can lead, and has led in my experience, to a 12-step call to carry a beneficial message. So again, my purpose, my role in the amends process is to be of maximum service to God and the people about me. And I've got to set right my wrongs to do that. So it says, but our man is sure to be impressed with a sincere desire. Now, this is important, to set right the wrong. He is going to be more interested in a demonstration, again, that word is important as well, of goodwill than in our talk of spiritual discoveries. So it doesn't, me talking about how much I meditated this morning, they don't care about that. They would like the money that I owe them. That's what they care about, which is rude. And you know what's wild? It's when I owe money, we'll talk about that, maybe not this week, depending on how far we go. It's wild. They don't want my money. Do you know that they don't want my money? They want their money back. Wild. That was rude when I found out. But again, what is an amend? An amend is not an apology. An amend is to restore, to repair, to correct from fault, to bring about to its previous condition. So setting right the wrong, that's what we're here to do. And I love, part of why I emphasize the word demonstration is because the 12 steps of whatever 12-step fellowship you are a part of, the 12 steps are not an intellectual exercise. It is not about what I know. It is not about what I think. It is not about what I share at the meeting. It is about what I demonstrate, the actions that I take. All of this is experiential. All of this is based in action. It does no good if I tell you how spiritual I am if I don't set right my amends, if I don't set right my wrongs. So a demonstration of goodwill then in our talk of spiritual discoveries. Did you know that people out in the world don't care if we did a 90 meetings in 90 days? I still got to make an amends. Alrighty. So, but I want to talk about just really quickly. The first part of our amends is the approach. So the amends is going to have a 4-stage process. The first process is the approach, and I'll talk about the others as we go through the rest of these paragraphs. But the first is the approach. I've got to find the person, and I've got to reach out. Yeah, nothing like apologizing for stuff they probably forgot until now. Yeah, absolutely. So what I've got to do is I've got to find them. I've got to find the people that I owe an amends to, and we can look them up on social media. We can try to find old numbers, old emails, and we get in contact with them. And what I want to do in the approach is I want to see if I can book a time to do the amends with them. It is also helpful to explain what the amends process is. Because I know we know, sometimes we know, sometimes we don't know. But they don't know. If it's like an amends, I had to make an amends to one of my neighbors. And I sent him a text message to see if he'd be open to receiving an amends. And he was like, wait, did I do something? Like as in him? And I'm like, no, I'm the problem. Which, by the way, it's like if you show up to whatever 12-step fellowship you're a part of and you're like, I'm the problem, I promise you're off to a fair start. That's where we're trying to get to. I'm the problem. So some ways in which we can send approach messages. I help sponsees when we go through amends write out and send the approach messages. As we were talking last week about the 8-step list and building willingness. One of the things that we can do is send out the approach messages. And so the approach message, it can look however you want it to look. But one of the ways that I like to say is, I'm a member of a 12-step. I'm reaching out today because I am a member of a 12-step fellowship. And part of me staying well means that I've had to reflect upon my life. And in so doing, it became obvious to me that I caused you harm. I would like to, if you would allow me an opportunity to sit with you, either in person, over the phone, or a video call, or whatever method you would prefer, to share with you the ways in which I've caused you harm, and do my best, if you would allow me, to make it right. Do you have to mention you're in a 12-step fellowship? No. I mean, you can. It's helpful. You have no idea how often it's helpful. But if you're like, I don't want to tell them, you can just say, I've been reflecting on my life, or I've been reflecting on our relationship. And it became obvious to me that I caused you harm. And I would like to, if you would allow me the opportunity to make it right, to set right my wrongs. So we got to send out those messages. So that's the first part. I call it the approach. And it sort of explains, what are we there to do? What we're doing. I'm trying to clean up the mess that I made. I'm trying to set things right. So, and I used to come from a school where people were big on like eyeball to eyeball, face to face. You sit down with them and only in person. But then we had a thing, and that thing was called COVID. And then there were people who were like desperate to meet in person. And then there were people who were like absolutely not comfortable meeting in person. And it was through that process that I really saw consent. I'll just ask them what way they would like to receive the amends. Just makes it easier. And it's something that's helped so much. And when I've had a couple amends left to make, and when I've helped sponsees with their amends. Because I'll be honest with you, if you ever owe me an amends, you probably don't worry about it. But if you ever owe me an amends, I want to meet you in person. I mean, I love you, but I got to put on pants for that. And it's a whole lot of work. Just give me a call. You know what I'm saying? That's how I approach it. So spiritual. So that's what I learned, was to get their consent. And if you're taught something different, you're right. And I'm wrong. But I will say I have a whole lot of fun over here being wrong. Pants optional. No, pants are mandatory. You wear pants when you're out in public. You wear pants. All right, focus. So that is the first part of the amends, is where we make the approach. And we're not trying to say, look at me, I'm so spiritual. We're trying to acknowledge what we're here to do, which is to set right our wrong, demonstrate a change, and see what we can do to make the situation right. It goes on to say, page 77, we don't use this as an excuse for shying away from the subject of God. It's almost as though the writers of this book had a feeling that alcoholics can take suggestions and operate in a real black and white all or nothing way. I know you're as shocked as I am to find out. Because we're the type of people, maybe not you. You guys are full of subtlety and nuance. This gal, I got no subtlety, I got no nuance. I'd read something like that and be like, I am not to mention any sort of spirituality ever. And it's like, hold on, that's not to say that we can't mention spirituality, we can't talk about God. It says, when it will serve any good purpose, we are willing to announce our convictions with tact and common sense. Oh, those. Listen, I'll let you know, in my experience, tact, common sense, acquired. They were acquired, an acquired taste. I had to practice tact. I had to have the spirit of the universe to flow through me to have an iota of common sense. I know you guys, it's an 8 for you, but for me, I had to practice. So when it will serve any good purpose, we are willing to announce our convictions with tact and common sense. The question of how to approach the man we hated will arise. And I love that because this is another example of the book meeting me where I'm at. Because I'm sure we all have those people on our 8-step list. Maybe it's the Mrs., the ex, where it's like, I cannot stand that person. And the book is going to say, yes, I hear you. I acknowledge that. It goes on to say, it may be that he has done us more harm than we have done him. Again, you can almost hear, you don't understand, but this guy, he's done me way more harm than I've ever done him. And the book's like, yes. Yeah, he may have done more harm than you've done him. It goes on to say, though we may have acquired a better attitude toward him. Now, the better attitude, where that would have come about is in step 4 and in step 5. And see, that's the thing. If I am really stuck on somebody that I owe an amends to, and the reason that I'm stuck is resentment, well, guess what I can do? I can go back to that 4-step inventory, and I can take that through a column. You know what I mean? Or a column, all 4 columns. I can take that resentment through the columns. And Scott put something that is absolutely not an amends in the chat. You can check that out. I have a feeling it says share to file. I don't think I'll be able to read it. But I have a feeling it is a poor example of how we make amends. Don't do that. Don't do it. Don't take Scott's advice on this. But it's that idea that, like, if I do not want to make the amends because I'm still resentful, I can utilize the resentment columns. Similarly, if I don't want to make the amends because I'm afraid, I can utilize the fear columns. We don't pick up the columns in step 4 to just shove them in a drawer and think, boy, that was a cool experience. No, we pick up the columns because we're going to use them as our way of life. The columns are going to be how we show up to all areas of our life. We're going to keep them going in the 10th step, and we're going to rock and roll with them in the 11th step. So if I need help growing in my willingness to make the amends, I can use some columns. I can sprinkle those in. So the question of how to approach the man we hated will arise. It may be that he has done us more harm than we have done him. And though we may have acquired a better attitude toward him, we are still not too keen about admitting our faults. So this is the book, meeting us where we're at. And it always reminds me that if the book Alcoholics Anonymous can meet me where I'm at, in my resistance, in my unwillingness, in my fear, in my resentment, in my humanity, then isn't that also where God meets me? That God meets me in those places as well. Now, just like God, the book is going to give us directions on where we need to go and take us where we need to go. So it's saying, yes, I hear you. You don't want to. You're afraid. You're resentful. That guy's a big stupid jerk. And then it says, nevertheless, with a person we dislike, we take the bit in our teeth. You know what that means? We do it. We do it. We do it anyways, which is rude. I can't tell you how much of my sponsorship is, yes, I hear you. Oh, absolutely. I fully acknowledge that. Yep, that is okay. Let's do it anyways. That's how I sponsor. Let's do it anyways. And so to take our bit in our teeth, what it means is sort of like to bite down and grit and bear it. Just go do it. Just go. And like what that looks like, send the amends text message. Go send the the approach text message. Go send that approach. Just do it. Go send it off. Don't worry. Just do it. Now, in the metaphor, to take, yeah, it's a horse reference. We're talking about some horses. No, I was like, is there a horse anything around? Not really. There's a llama on the floor. Not a live one, a stuffed. Anywho, focus page. But to take the bit in our teeth. So if you've ever seen a horse that's being red, the horse that's being ridden, what it'll have on its head will be a bridle. And the bridle is how the rider sort of directs and controls the horse. And the bit is two pieces of metal that go into the horse's mouth. And that's what the bits are connected directly to the reins, which are what you use to sort of control the horse. And so what does that mean to take our bit in our teeth? One is the grit and bear it, just go do it, bite down. All right, I'm going to do it. But another way to look at taking the bit in our teeth is to be led. To be led. I am being led by God. So allow myself to be led by God, to have that surrendered posture and go do it anyways. And this is again, the book illuminating divine truths. It says it is harder to go to an enemy to a friend. Obviously, yeah. There was a time my best friend, we had gotten into a big fight, like just, when you hang out a lot, one of those fights. And I reached out, I was like, hey, I know I owe you an amends, but instead, would you like to name the spider I found in the bathroom? It's so much, yes. It was Stuart, the bathroom spider. Amends made, baby. Not amends made. You can't, that's not how that goes. But you see, with a friend, you can be like, want to name the spider in the bathroom? You can't do that with your ex-employer. You can't show up and be like, here's Stuart. You want to? No. You've got to actually make the amends. So, nevertheless, we do that. And it says, it's harder to go to an enemy to a friend. So acknowledging, yeah, we know who wants to go to somebody that we have been resentful towards for maybe for years. But we find it much more beneficial. There is so much more spiritual freedom in making the amends that I don't want to make. Which, again, is rude that that's the order. But that's our experience. And I do not know that to be the case before I make the amends. You see, when I'm sitting in that position of fear, and there is that mountain, and it feels like a mountain of the amends before me, I start going in my mind and projecting, and I think they won't want to hear from me. I think they're going to slam the door in my face. I think it's going to be this and this and this, and I don't even think I need to. And that's what it's like when I'm on this side of the amends. But what do we know from experience is that more often than not, it is a freedom beyond anything we could have imagined on the other side of the amends that I don't want to make. And that's what's powerful about this thing. And again, an example of why it is not an intellectual exercise. Because if it's an intellectual exercise, I already know how the amends are going to go. I already know that it's not going to be well received. I already know. And once you know what, I go make the amends, you know who's wrong? Me. I'm wrong. Almost invariably, it goes better than I would have thought. So we go to him in a helpful and forgiving spirit, confessing our former ill feeling and expressing our regret. So the first part of the amends process is the approach. When we send that a message, or we reach out, or we call them to see if they'd be open to receiving an amends. Now the second, I have a visual diagram, but I'm not able to share it because I'm on a tablet and I didn't figure out how to do it. And it's a little tricky. But next week I'll share it with you. Rob might have a copy of it. No pressure if you don't. And he might put it in the chat. No worries if he doesn't. But the second part of the amends process is when we actually sit down with them in the amends. And part 2 is to explain exactly what I was saying. What I did, being specific when appropriate and focusing on my defects of character. So what I do when I work with my sponsees is I'll sit with them and I'll help them write it out. Excuse me. And I tell them it doesn't have to be, oh, is that it? Did you find it? Oh, Rob's on it. He's the best. That's why we can't make up things and be mean to him. That was pre-meeting banter. Alrighty. So I want to say what I did, being specific and focusing on my defects of character. And that can be really helpful to write out. When I sit with my sponsees, I help them and we write out the amends together. And so often in that writing out the amends together, that amends that they didn't want to make, they kind of begin to see what it'll actually look like. And they become open and they become willing. And it helps. And I do say bring it to the amends. It's not the end of the world if you read off of it like a script. Last week I shared that if that's something we do, we can explain, listen, I want to be clear that I'm reading off of this piece of paper, not because this amends is not from the heart. But the reason I'm reading off this piece of paper is because this amends is important to me. And I don't want to mess it up, and I don't want to leave anything out. And that's so I'm not a big deal. For me, it's not a big deal if somebody brings the paper if they read off it. So And so where do I get what I did and what my defects of character are? Where does that come from? Well, if I have been searching and fearless and thorough in my fourth step, almost all of what I've written in my fourth column of resentments can be plugged right into the amends. Not all of it, but almost all of it. A lot of it can go right there. Also, in sex inventory in columns 2 and columns 3, I can take what I wrote there and I can put almost all of it into the amends itself. And I've worked with people. Actually, to be honest with you guys, I have learned more about making amends through receiving poor amends than I have any sort of formal instruction. Like, I'm sharing with you some formal instruction. But that lesson of like those two things, being specific when applicable, when appropriate, and focusing on my defects of character, those two things together, so helpful. So we were talking before the meeting that like a year ago, I was in Ohio and I ended up out in Indiana, and I received a call, and it was one of those God moments because phone calls were not coming through on my phone, which I will say, I was like, oh no, I can't get phone calls. How unfortunate. It was nice. What a delight. But a call was coming through, and it was somebody who owed me an amends. And I was like, How is this happening? It was wild. And because I couldn't get calls going in or out, I was like, well, I better take it. So I answered it. And it was this person making an amends to me. Now, I so understand the fear and the anxiety. So I also, guys, want you to know when I receive amends, I receive them with a lot of grace. I'm not like, hey, actually. But how the amends was given was just listing off that person's defects of character. So it was like, I was selfish, I was self-centered, I was inconsiderate, and I was like, and then after I was like, hey, I just want to be clear. Are you talking about this incident that happened? Were you talking about that? Like, it was one of those. And so that's part of why, for me, it's helpful to be specific about what the harm was and the defects of character. And there was a time where I was working with a sponsee of mine, and she had written out some of the amends, but she had just listed off the harms that she had done. And I will tell you, the tone came off like, I did this, and I did this, and I did this, and I did this. And it's not it. It just sounds like, yeah, those are the ways you hurt me. But when I can say, for example, now you guys know when I talk about defects, I use this example. You know, the example of when I stole your car, I slept with your husband, and I peed on your carpet. That one. And so now this is the full circle moment. We're going to make an amends for that. I know. Yikes, the husband one. All right. So when I slept with your husband, that was incredibly selfish. It was inconsiderate. It was a betrayal of your trust. And it was incredibly unthoughtful and unkind of me. When I stole your car, that was another example of my dishonesty, my entitlement, my selfishness. And when I peed on your carpet, that was, and here's how we tie it in. That was largely as the result of my alcoholism. And what I owed to the people in my life was to treat my alcoholism, to treat the illness that I had. And I was complacent in doing that. I was stuck in my denial. I was stuck in playing God in my life, thinking I know what's best. And as a result, I overdrank. And as a result, I caused you harm. And then when I just tried to put things over the pee and like duck out, that was again dishonest and selfish. And it was inconsiderate of me. And so that, we can see that carries more weight than I slept with your husband, I stole your car, and I peed on your carpet. And we can tell that that's a little bit more weighty than just saying, I'm selfish, I'm inconsiderate, I'm dishonest, I'm entitled, I'm boom, boom, boom. When I put the two together, I'm really beginning to acknowledge and begin to really take accountability for the things that I did. And that's powerful. And so that's what I'm going to do. Yeah, you got to buy a new rug. And that's actually part of it. If I owe the person money or a new rug, new carpeting, what do? I show up with the money. And if I don't have the money, I show up with some of the money and a payment plan that I follow up on. That's powerful. But the next part of the amends process, part 3, is to ask if there is any other way in which I caused harm. And we're going to see this spoken about in the next paragraph. So I'm going to dive into it. So it says, under no condition do we criticize such a person or argue. So this is not at any point about what they did. And we're not there. So when we ask, is there any other way in which I caused you harm? It's important to know that we're not arguing. We're not debating. We zip it, and we listen. And if I want to get a glimpse of my defects of character, man, they'll tell me. If I want to see what's blocking me off from God and the people about us, man, if I ask, they will tell me. And I can say it in a number of ways. I can say it like, please let me know if there's any other way in which I caused you harm. I can also say it was not my intention to leave anything out, but I'm aware that there might be other ways in which I caused you harm that I'm not aware of or I didn't remember. And I would like to give you the opportunity for you to share those with me now. It can also be helpful to ask them if they want to share with me about how my actions made them feel. So, is there anything that you need to share with me about how my behavior, my actions made you feel? Now, I've not done this yet, but I heard this the other day, and I'm like, oh, this is, like, if you do this, you get a little bad. I'll give you an amends badass patch. That's what I'll do. Is there anyone else that you think I owe an amends to? Oh, that'll help that 8-step list. Oh, I know, I can see some of your faces. Yikes. Yikes. Yeah. Oh, she's a-growing. And so, when we do that, it says, under no condition do we criticize such a person or argue. Simply, we tell them that we will never get over drinking until we have done our utmost to straighten out the past. That's the purpose. We've got to set right the things in us and around us, the harms that we've caused, because that is what is blocking us from this power. We are there to sweep off our side of the street, realizing that nothing worthwhile can be accomplished until we do so. Never trying to tell him what he should do. Hey, but you. His faults are not discussed. We stick to our own. So all we're trying to do there is talk about the harms that we have caused. Now, are there times where people are profoundly impacted by the amends and they will acknowledge what they've done as well? Absolutely. We don't need to cut them off. We can accept that with grace, but we don't bring it up. You know, that like, hey, I know I'm making this amends, but you did that. No, we do not do that. So to reiterate, so far, the 3 things that we've discussed for amends. The first is the approach message, explaining what I'm there to do to try to book a time. Now, I'll also point something out. If we book a time, we keep a time. We don't reschedule a time, especially if the amends is for rescheduling and being disrespectful of somebody's time. I had somebody that did that to me. That was what the amends was for. They were like, they were like, I will be available at like the times that absolutely did not work for me. That were like, it's like, could I meet you at first thing in the morning? Nobody wants me at first thing in the morning. I don't want me at first thing in the morning. No, God, no, right? So when possible, we let them pick the time, and we, like most of them, but keep that time. Don't reschedule, don't put it off, keep that time. It's got to be a priority, just like a 5th step is, because that's not demonstrating change if I'm just continuing on to like blow it off. So the first thing is I book that amends. I explain what I'm there and what I'm trying to do, see if I can book a time. The second thing that I do is when we're seated, when we're meeting together, I explain what I've done. Being specific, focusing on my defects of character when applicable. The third thing I do is I ask if there is anything else, any other way in which I caused harm, anything they need to share. Now this is the 4th. What can I do to make it right? I ask, what can I do to make it right? Now, I got some news. Most of the time they will be like, this is more than enough. This is great. Or it'll be a just keep doing what you're doing. Now, let me tell you my experience with the keep doing what you're doing. I'm like, oh, it's a gimme amends. Woo! Like, I done it. Yes. Like, woo! It's not a gimme. What that means is if they say, keep doing what you're doing, what that means is me continuing to pray on a daily basis, to meditate on a daily basis, to do my evening review, inventory on a daily basis, to work with others, to make the rest of my amends. That is a commitment that I've made to that person to restore the harm that I've done. So I don't have room for complacency. You see, when I continue on this way of life, that is continuing with the amends process, which is rude because I wanted a gimme. And I'll tell you, actually, I'll share with you some amends stories. I owed an amends to a friend of mine who became an assistant pastor of a church. Some of y'all could see this coming. Some of y'all know what is happening. I didn't. I couldn't see it. I was blind to it. So I go and I make the amends to this guy. And I ask, what can I do to make it right? And he's like, well, you could come to church. No, I didn't say that. I said, absolutely, I'll be there. And oh, do you guys know that happens in the morning? That is an early. We just already established I don't morning well. And I showed up for like a year to it was Filipino Baptist Church. I will say the food, phenomenal. But I was also smoking at the time, like cigarettes. And they didn't know about that. So I would have to like chain smoke before because you weren't supposed, I mean, it was one of those women are supposed to wear dresses. That wasn't happening either. But I did my best. I would like chain smoke and then I would like go there and I would have like Nicorette gum just to kind of get through it and then go to a big book study and they'd be like, can we help you inside? I'm like, nope, I'm great. I'm going to greet people. It was a bold-faced lie. I just wanted to chain smoke before the big book study. So spiritual. But I went there and what I will say is, was it inconvenient? Absolutely. Was it at an hour that I do not thrive at? Absolutely. Was their particular expression of their particular faith different than mine? For sure. But was it a beautiful experience? Absolutely. I need to be inconvenienced. I need to get out of my comfort zone. And for like Sunday after Sunday after Sunday for like a year, I got to hear people share about their experience of their God. And that's not a bad place for me to be. You know what I mean? And there was a couple of times where like the idea of resentments came up. And I'll tell you, I was like the remedial kid. And they thought I was going to say something like punch people when I was like, oh, I know what to do with resentments. And they were a little like, you do what now? When I described the inventory process and the prayers and the, like the restitution, I threw it out there. Woo! But that was probably honestly the most intensive thing that I've had to do in terms of like actually making an amends that I had to like continue and do. And it was a positive experience. And again, the food, oh, if you get an opportunity to have Filipino food, amazing. So, I mean, spiritual value, spiritually nourished in doing things that are uncomfortable, but also, oh, the fried eggplant. I loved it. Anywho, focusing up. So, his faults are not discussed. We stick to our own. If our manner is calm, frank, and open, we will be gratified with the results. Now, we like to talk about happy, joyous, and free. But I can't get to happy, joyous, and free if I do not show up in the amends process with calm, frank, and open. I need to start there. So calm, frank, and open. So to show up in that like calm spirit, that I'm not riddled with that fear and that anxiety that I'm sure. And of course nothing gets the digestive system going like an amends I gotta make. We know, like we're going to be nervous. We're going to be afraid, but we show up in a calm manner. To be frank is to be like, this is what I did, being specific. And again, I always emphasize when applicable. I will give you some examples of when it is not applicable from receiving not great amends. There was one time there was this gal, God bless her, she was in the program and she came up to me and she's like, Paige, she was always so quiet and like, Paige, owe you an amends. Just like, so quiet. We had a service, we were on a service meeting, and her job at the service meeting was to tell, we had this like loud, boisterous guy, and her job was to tell him to go F himself. He loved it. He gave her that role. He's like, you tell me that, yeah. And she'd be like, you go F yourself, Peter. It was the best. It was the best. So she came up to me to make an amends. And this was her amends. Her amends was, so I shouldn't do the voice. I can't not do the voice. It just happens in my head. But her amends was, Paige, I've been really judging you. Okay, that's it. That was the amends. Now, fair enough. Like, I get it. I'm not taking umbrage with that. But in that moment, I wanted to be like, girl, don't do that with other people. I got the shoulders. I know why you're judging me. That's fine. I get it. That's an example of one where that's usually not helpful unless our behavior indicated that they know that we were being judgmental. For example, like with gossip, it's typically not helpful to be like, hey, I was talking about you to a whole lot of people, because we know what happens when we hear that spiral. Who said what about me, and what are they thinking? That's not helpful. So how I've amended gossip in the past is that I have been intentional about saying kind things to that person's face and kind things about them behind their back, and intentional with it. And do you know what happened? I stopped gossiping. Am I a perfect person? No, but like that was something. Like a lot of times it's like, oh no, I can't make the amends because I'm just going to continue the behavior. Oftentimes I need to make the amends for the behavior to change. And so that's how I make that amends. Or for example, when we've spoken about, or we will speak about things like infidelity, if there's things that to share with them, it would genuinely cause them harm, not us and not their opinion of us, but genuinely cause them harm, we speak about it in a more general way. So that's an example of where, I found it not helpful to tell people we've gossiped about them, or that like, man, I've been judging the heck out of you. And it's like, what? I didn't know that. Like, that's just causing more harm. So unless it was obvious in how we showed up to them, I find that to be not helpful. So calm, frank, and open. And to be open is that like with an open heart, to be receptive, not walled off, not closed, but open. And so if we show up in that way, we will be gratified with the results. Y'all know what that means? It means it will go well. Not every time, but more often than not, it will go well. And in fact, if you're like, I don't believe you, well, we got some math. It says in 9 cases out of 10, the unexpected happens. Y'all know what's unexpected? That it goes well. I never go to an amends thinking it'll go well. I just assume the SWAT team's going to come and arrest me. I haven't done anything, but like, I assume it's going to go poorly. That's how I show up to amends. And 9 times out of 10, it goes well. And I'll share with you some examples and some experiences that I've had of amends that didn't go well. When I was living in Lethbridge, Alberta, I was living in a crack house, and there was like a teenager that was living there as well. And I reached out to him to see if in recovery, to see if he would be open to receiving an amends. Because of course I caused harm. Even just being in that home, in his environment, doing what I was doing. So I reached out. And his response was to block me. And that is okay. That's okay. That's okay. Now that one's a little heavier, but kind of a funny one. I'll tell you this story. I don't come off good in this story. So, I had a doctor, and this was like after I got sick. And my doctor had a habit. Now, not excusing anything, but I'm painting the picture. I'm setting the scene. So my doctor, if my appointment was at 3, I wouldn't get into, when you get into the doctor room, I wouldn't get into the room until like 4 or 5, and I wouldn't see him until like 5:30. Like, it was one of those. And I didn't have like a cell phone that had internet at that time. That's dating me. But I didn't have a cell phone that had internet at that time, and I was bored and a little resentful. And I was going through the drawers. You gotta find a speculum here, a speculum there. The ladies know. And I'm just seeing, I'm seeing what's there. I'd see what's there, and I'm bored and going through. And then, now I was not at a good place in my life. I was at a place in my life, I'm sober, but I'm dying under the illness that I have. I'm dying because I'm sick. I'm dying because of the self-pity. I'm dying because of the pain. I'm dying from that. And I find an implement. Now, that this was an instrument. And have a good night. Love you. This was man, you know when you say things and you're like, where I was in the story? Like, oh, that's not a good place for a tangent. But I found an implement, an instrument that I could use to end my life. And I'm like, oh, I'm a yoink that. And I took that because that's where I was. That's truly where I was and the hope that I had for my life. And, time goes on and I'm probably, honestly, you think your 8-step list done, go sponsor other people. I can't tell you how often I'm working with others and then they mention an amends. I'm like, oh, darn it. And another one comes up. I was probably working with a sponsee and we're doing the 8-step list and some clicks. I'm like, oh no. And I remember that. I'm like, I've got to make that right. So, my friend saw a different doctor in the same doctor's office. Here's what I did. I was like, friend, could you, because my friend had to have regular blood work. So I was like, hey, could you book an appointment with your doctor first thing in the morning? And I was going to go with my friend, like for that accountability, like, yeah, I'm utilizing. And my friend, also not a morning person, God bless, absolutely did that. Now, here was my thought process. You guys can let me know that I am wrong, but I think first thing in the morning, boom, in and out, nobody's going to be there, solid plan. Well, I get to that doctor's office. It's like 8 a.m. I do not thrive at 8. I get to that doctor's office. I have never seen it so full in my life. Never seen it so full it is packed. It is wall to wall. It's standing room only. I'm not standing. I am like, what has happened? And so then I roll up to the medical receptionist. And I am trying to do this thing. Now, I know it might seem a foreign concept for me, but I'm trying to do this thing. It's called subtlety. And so I go and I do a bit of a whisper. And it's like, hey, a couple of years ago, I stole this thing and I would like to pay for it. And so I'm using my subtlety. I'm using my whisper. You don't know what she's doing. She's like, what did you steal? You stole what? In front of everyone. In front of everyone. You stole what? What did you steal? What do you want to pay for? You're a thief. She's a thief. She didn't say that, but that's how it felt. What did you do? And I'm like, girl, no. I just want to die. Swallow it up and die. And she's like, I don't know what to do with any of that. You'll have to see the doctor. So I gotta wait there for several hours. And I go and I wait for him. He shows up and he's like, what's up? And so I explain, hey, I just want you to know, and by the way, you might be like, hey, just trying to pay for the thing. That didn't feel like it was a full amends. Yeah, I was trying to cut quarters. Obviously. What are we talking about here? Of course I was. So I wait and I wait forever. I don't go looking in the drawers this time, just in case. And so he shows up after a wait. It was a wait. It was humbling. And he's like, so what's up? And I explained hey, and I did say, it was to kill myself. Oh, trying to throw in a little bit of sympathy in there because I'm, again, such a spiritual giant. But I explained and I said I would like to pay for it. And he's like, Paige, they're like 50 cents. And then he sent me on my way. And in terms of an amends, that did not go well. But that's a good story now, isn't it? Isn't it? And sometimes we come to the rooms and we want to tell our war stories. Man, I think we should tell our amends stories. That's where the juice is in the amends. So it is one of those things where even if it doesn't go well, that's okay. That's okay. I'm not in the results business. I tried to be in the results business of my life and I burnt my life to the ground, the ones that end up like a Hallmark. Absolutely. I burnt my life to the ground trying to be in the results business. I can't think of anyone less qualified to be in the results business than me. I got my pink slip in step 3. I am fired. So the results, where do we find the results? Or who is in charge of the results? Sorry. The results is God's business. And so what I can do is I can pray and I can say, God, I leave the results. God, higher power, creator, spirit of the universe. I leave the results of this amends or this amends process in your hands. Give me strength as I go from here to do your bidding. That's ways in which we can communicate as well. But in 9 cases out of 10, the unexpected happens. Sometimes the man we are calling upon admits his own fault. So feuds of years standing melts away in an hour. It's incredible how much a simple amends can change. And as we go on later in the book, we're going to be transitioning into this chapter to where it talks about specific types of amends. And some of you are married or in relationship, and you might have that idea of like, I'll make amends when they make amends first. Yeah, unfortunately, I gotta be the one to demonstrate. I gotta do it first. So, but if we do that, like, it's incredible what happens. Rarely do we fail to make satisfactory progress. So it might not go perfect, but oftentimes, more often than not, progress is made. Our former enemies sometimes praise what we are doing and wish us well. Occasionally, they will offer assistance. And some of us know that there are times we have to kind of like do it like an amends dominoes, where it's like, I got to make amends to that person so I can get the contact info for that person so I can get that person, amends dominoes. You know what I'm talking about if you've made a lot of them. It's like, But so occasionally they'll offer assistance and contact and maybe they really want to help. And that's what happens more often than not. But when I'm standing on the front side of that mountain of the amends, I don't think so. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think it's going to be awful. It's going to go terribly. But more often than not, it goes better than I could have imagined. It does say it should not matter, however, if someone does throw us out of his office. It doesn't matter if they're not open. We have made our demonstration, done our part. It's water over the dam. When the water is over the dam, it's gone. We've done our best. We can let it go. And there are some times with family or things like that where they're not open right away, and we can follow that up with in 6 months' time with a, hey, would you be open now? So that's really the directions on what to do in regards to making amends. And I'll share this story with you. This it's another funny one, but it's one about me receiving the amends. I had a former sponsee, and I ran into her outside of back in the day when I did the big book in person. Ran into her. She was coming to the big book study, and she was working with a friend of mine. And she comes up to me and she's like, "Paige, I owe you an amends," and then just kind of launches into it, which is fine. Again, I receive those with grace. And she says, like, I owe you an amends for this and this and this. Like, whatever it was. I genuinely don't remember what she was making an amends. Oh, maybe I do. Anywho. And then she goes, oh, I also owe you an amends for, oh, no, you know what? Not that. And I'll get a little brownie points on this. I didn't follow that up with the what now? I was like, okay, I just received it with grace. And, what can I do to make it right? You just continue on with the amends. But that's part of why it is helpful to have it written out. So you're not doing the psych amends. Because that was, I'll handle that well. And I know I'm none of my business. And so I don't mind. But it's one of those, you don't want to be like, oh, I also owe you an amends for... Oh, not that. And then we're in a bit of a pickle. So that's one of those things too. Again, why I'm big on writing it out. And again, if we are diligent in this process, it doesn't have to take long. We can move through our amends very, very quickly. And so, yeah, I've had where people have not wanted to receive my amends, and that's okay. And make the demonstration. The results are absolutely none of my business. And I'll let you know a little secret is if they're willing to meet you for a phone call or for in person for a coffee, they're probably not going to yell at you. Just, that's a lot of effort. They're usually going to tell you to go F yourself and stick your head where your sun don't shine or whatever in the approach message. So if they're willing to meet you, they're probably willing to, it's probably not going to go absolutely terribly. So what I'll do, what happens after this is where we dive into what do we do if we owe money? What? An alcoholic? An addict? Owing money? This is shocking information. Who would have thought? Followed by, what do we do if if we've committed a crime? Not you, law-abiding citizens, but little miss breaking the law over here. What do we do if we've committed a crime? And then what do we do if we've committed infidelity in our relationship? And then it gives us directions on what to do to repair a relationship, even if we haven't committed infidelity. So those are the sections and directions that we're going to get into next week. Not quickly, because I go at the pace that I go. Can we do financial amends on vibes? I do them on vibes. Actually, I'll tell you, I will say, when you go to make a financial amends, the bank, the credit card company, the person you owe money to, they don't seem to be jazzed to receive amends based on vibes. They seem to want the exact amount back. And if it's an institution, for some reason, they're going to charge interest on that bad boy. Rude. But I finance based on vibes. And again, it's not my money, it's their money back. And more powerfully, it's when I approach money through the lens of it's God's money. Man, that can change how I show up to my finances. But what I want to say is, if anyone here, perhaps not you guys, I know nobody relates to this, has had any money troubles? Anyone ever had criminal offenses? Not you guys. Struggled in terms of we stepped out on a relationship that we shouldn't have, or just have relationship troubles in general. I know no one here can relate. You're absolute saints. It's delightful. But what I will say is, if by chance we relate even just a little bit, it's important to remember that they didn't have a lot of money when they were writing this book. Rob will explain that they were trying to sell shares in Works Publishing to scrape together enough money. And so they weren't wasting extra ink on things that weren't applicable. So if you owe money, you've broken the law, you've cheated, you struggle in your relationships, well, it was written for a reason. You know what I'm saying? It was written for a reason. So you are not alone. And what we'll see as we go through is 8 and 9 intertwined together. So what I'll do real quick is summarize. The first is I send the approach. So explaining what I would like to do to book a time, what I'm trying to do. The second is that when we meet for the amends, I explain what I did, being specific when appropriate and focusing on my defects of character. The third thing that I do is I ask if there is any other way in which I harmed them or anything they need to share with me. And I listen. And then the fourth thing is I ask, what can I do to make it right? And I wasn't clear on this, but I do it. I then go do it. That's what we do. And that is the amends process. And next week, I'll probably do a little bit of review, but I think that's it for this week. So what I will do is I will, Page'll sleuth if you have trouble finding people. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I'll do my best to try to find them for you. All right. So next week, I'll do some review and I'll stop the recordings because I'm on a different device. So hold on.